Hi, I'm Nathan, and you're listening to the Queer Conscious Podcast. Today's episode is dedicated to a remarkable parent, a trailblazer, and adorable penguin. Sven the penguin is half of a gay power couple whose love was so strong that the zookeepers at Sea Life Sydney Aquarium gave them 2 eggs, which they fostered and raised into 2 beautiful chicks. Sadly, Sven the penguin died in August 2024. And get this, after he passed away, they brought his partner Magic in to see him so that he would understand that his partner wasn't coming back. And when Magic saw his partner there, he started singing. No, I'm not joking. He started singing, and the rest of the penguin colony joined in. Isn't that beautiful? These penguins showed us that family isn't just about biology. It's about love, intention, and showing up for those you care about. Which brings us to today's episode, where I sit down with another remarkable parent, Moe Ari Brown, who is a relationship therapist, public speaker, and the love expert at Hinge. In this conversation, Moe and I explore the journey of becoming a queer parent, what parenthood can teach us about ourselves, and how it can even help us appreciate our own parents, or at least understand them a little better. Whether or not parenthood is a path you want to walk, and let's be clear, not everyone needs to, this episode will leave you with a deeper understanding of yourself, your parents, your family, and the many forms love can take. Let's get into it. Welcome, Mo. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So excited to have you. I've been following you for quite some time, and you and I actually were guests on an NPR podcast together, and I was like, oh, this is a brilliant human. Need to have them on the podcast. So thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. That was a really good episode. You were very insightful. I learned a lot in that process too.
So I'd love for you to just tell the audience a little bit about you and your background. So yeah, tell us about yourself.
Okay, sounds good. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist by profession. So majority of my background is working with individuals, families, people in romantic relationships, in therapy. I identify as non-binary transgender, so I was assigned female at birth, and I've gone through what gender transition looks like for me. And that's important to say because it really looks different from person to person. So I've built a little bit of an expertise, I would say, working with the transgender community and helping people navigate gender transition. I also am the love and connection expert at Hinge, the dating app. And so a lot of the work I do there is focusing in on relationships, talking about queer relationships, how we love, how we live, and how to make the dating space more inclusive and safe for all people to find love. So, yeah, I love talking about relationships. I love talking about being queer, all the intersections.
Yeah. And unfortunately, we only have an hour today. And I was thinking about a topic, and we were trying to decide what would be the most important topic to discuss. But I mean, you obviously have a very rich background and expertise in all this. But I think in our discussions, we were just talking about family and parenthood and how challenging that is to be a queer parent. And so I think that's how we decided, let's dive into that subject. So I'm curious for you, with all your background and expertise and relationships and dating and therapy, did that have any influence at all in you becoming a parent?
That's a really great question. So, yeah, I definitely feel like I knew at some point I wanted children or a child, but really getting further into my gender transition, being with my wife, who I've been with for 10 years. We also identify as non-monogamous, but that's like another story for another episode. But being with her for more than 10 years now, I felt like we chose the journey of parenthood because we felt solid in the relationship we have together. And that was something that I hadn't considered prior to that moment, that the relationship you're in, or that's if you want to have a child as a product of that relationship, But for us, we really wanted to have a child together. And it was that our relationship dynamic made way for that. And then it's like, I can't unsee it. Now, when I think
Mm.
about it, I don't know that I would just want to have a child with everyone. So I couldn't, like, before having a child with my partner, I would have said, yes, I definitely want children to anybody I was dating. But now going through that journey, I think it was clear it was something about our relationship that made me want to co-parent with her.
Yeah,
And now I'm happy that I made that choice versus like doing it some other way.
it felt solid with you too. And
Yeah.
so describe a little bit about what it felt like. Was it always feeling solid, or did you have to
Mm-hmm.
build towards that? Like, what was that
Mm-hmm.
like?
Oh yeah, we definitely had to build. I say we
Hmm.
always felt like we always felt solid, but I think the building that needed to happen was getting to the place where we were ready to embark upon that journey because it really changes your relationship. You go from I to we when you first get into a relationship, and then that we kind of transforms into this plural kind of us. So it's not like we are one, it's more like we equals three. And it's a very interesting shift in your relationship. And I'll say that it really expanded my understanding of love and what was possible. It hadn't
Mm.
dawned on me until my daughter arrived that I'd have to practice sharing the person that I've been spending the prior 8 years with another human. And, we had already been practicing non-monogamy and really deepening our understanding of love as expansive. So I was really grateful for that theory already live in our lives because I had to put
Mm.
it into practice kind of immediately. It's like this other human wants to love both of us and take up more of our time, and it's no longer just the two of us. It's definitely a journey I feel like you have to be ready for. So it was a building to get to that.
Yeah, and I never would have even noticed those parallels between non-monogamy and right and sharing that person that you love and parenthood, right? Where you're
Mm-hmm.
obviously, you don't get all their time anymore. It's not just like, hey,
Yeah.
it's date nights, just me and you. It's like now it's family time together. So,
Yeah.
wow, I didn't even think about that. Would you say it was jealousy that came up? How would you describe it?
Yeah. So I think it's hard because I think to try to capture that feeling in a tangible way on the head, it's jealousy because
Mm-hmm.
it's like that's the best language we have to describe it. But I think what it is better, even better. It's like FOMO.
Mm. Yeah,
I
there
think
we go.
often for non-carrying parents, whether you're uh, yeah, I'll just say for non-caring parents, there
And
is often,
sorry, non-caring. Can you define that just
yeah,
for, yeah.
yeah. So some people will say non-caring, some people will say non-gestational. That just means that you did not carry the child.
Okay.
And so that can look like there is no person in your relationship that carries the child because you might have a surrogate, but it also could mean that your partner is carrying the child. Just kind of depends on where you are in that family dynamic.
Mhm. Yeah.
But if you identify as the person who is not, or a person who is not carrying a child, but you have a connection to that child is spending 10 months with another human that you don't have access to in your physical body. And so it's kind of like this fear of missing out that arrives very early into that dynamic because you're thinking they have a closer bond than I do naturally.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then I have to figure out how to bond with this child while maybe they're chest feeding, while maybe they're getting all their basic needs met by this other human. And so it's like, where do I fit in? So it's more like FOMO and wanting to
Mm.
build that connection while not having the same level of, I guess, it not being as high touch as the other parents or parents in the situation. And so I think a lot of non-gestational parents feel this feeling, whether you're in like a traditional cis hetero relationship. It's often the guy that is like talking about feeling left out in many ways. But
Mhm.
in other relationship um, relationship situations, it's like the person who's not carrying the child has less access to the child for those early 10 months.
Yeah, and I think that's why they talk about the bonding being so important with the father and the child and things to do with them. So, like,
Yeah.
what was your way of dealing with that FOMO?
I wanted to get involved where I could. I got in where I could fit in.
Yeah.
I was like, I want to be involved in bath time, or I want to change. I'll change all the diapers. They stink. Let me get
Oh my
them.
God. Okay, Mel, you best parent award to you for even wanting to participate in that because I just hear so many horror stories from, parents that I'm friends with or in my family of like, one parent just not wanting to do any of that. But yeah, that's amazing. So you wanted to do that. You wanted to participate in it. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Anything that came to caring for our daughter, I was like, I want to participate in that. And so no role was like too bad or like too beneath me. No, not like too horrible. I just really love that ability to connect because these other aspects, like I was not going to be chest feeding or doing anything like that. So it's like I have to be present. So then it might mean that I was like taking her on walks or doing other things for us to build intimacy and
Yeah.
build a bond.
Yeah. And see, this is why I think we need more queer parents because
Yeah.
you have to like really want to be a parent, right? It doesn't just
Yeah.
like, oops, it happened. Oh, crazy. It's like, no,
Mm-hmm.
you have to be emotionally, mentally prepared. And then the logistical loopholes that you have to break through to make it happen.
Yeah.
So, how did you decide you were ready to become a parent?
Mm. It's honestly, it's a leap. It's almost like I knew financially and otherwise we were ready in that way.
Hmm. Yeah.
And I don't think that I ever felt fully ready. I knew that I was going to take this leap and hope that I could fly, as the saying goes.
Yeah.
Uh, there never came a time where I felt ready. Like you
Yeah.
are the human you need to be for this child. Even today, I just try every single day to be a better person.
Mm.
And I try to live into the standards that I want my daughter to grow up seeing and taking in for
Mm.
herself. So I try to practice what I preach. And I just never felt ready. And then when she got here, it was like, wow, like this is just changing my life.
Yeah.
It changes your life in ways that you can't expect either. And so it's really almost like as much as you prepare, everything is going to be different than how you prepare.
Yeah. And there's just no preparation for things like that.
Hmm.
But there is a process, right? And I'm curious because I think a lot of queer parents or potential queer parents don't even want to think about surrogacy or adoption and
Mm.
all of the process. It just sounds complicated. So how did you navigate it? Like,
My wife and I had a lot of conversations that were necessary early on about whether or
mm,
not we would do reciprocal IVF, whether or not we would do IVF, if she was going to carry, if we would adopt. We kind of really were open to the possibilities, but we landed on reciprocal IVF because it felt the most right for our family, in that I harvested some eggs that they turned into embryos using donor sperm, and I had to go off testosterone for like 9 months to do this. It was like a process. And then a month later, we did a frozen embryo transfer. And my wife, on after that first embryo transfer, she was pregnant. So it kind of
mm,
like was such a blessing for us. We didn't have to go through this very expensive process multiple times because the harvesting of the embryos really is like, without insurance, could be over $40,000, $50,000, let alone like the insemination itself with frozen embryos. So we were
yeah.
really, really blessed in that process. And uh yeah, so we chose that because we wanted to make sure that I felt involved in the process. And
Mm,
it was really important to my wife that I feel like I was really in the process because I was not going to be carrying at any point. And I know
mhm.
that I could make the choice to do so, but she was really like, she really desires to carry. I would have been only doing that from like a biological perspective, like, oh, like sharing my DNA. And she's like,
Yeah.
yeah, let's do this. And I think it really worked out the best for both of us.
Wow, I love that. So it's is your embryos then
Mm-hmm.
transferred to your wife, and
Yes.
she carried. Oh my gosh, that's so cool. I love science. This is
Science,
amazing.
right?
And so, and what a great way then for both of you then to feel part of the baby making process there
Mm-hmm.
and feel connected to your child. And I think that's
Yes.
something we often don't think about, at least, gay men thinking about trying to have kids is, neither
Mm-hmm.
one of us would be carrying the
Mm-hmm.
child. So
Yeah.
there's more opportunity there for you, it seems like.
I will say that, my wife and I would say even other people have explored with us throughout this process, like what would it be like for my wife or people who are not quote unquote biologically related to our daughter? Like what will bonding look like? We really emphasize bloodlines and kinship in our country or in our world. And I think that there's this myth that the bonding will be it won't happen if you're not biologically related. And I think my daughter's kind of like proven that 20,000 times over. I remember like when she came out of my wife, they put her on my wife's chest and it was like this peace in the room. Like she just really immediately knew that that was like the home she had
Mm.
been in
Yeah.
for this much time. And so I think for any parent, even if you're not a caring parent, kids respond to their needs being met and being nurtured and loved. The more love that you give them, the more they recognize who you are in their life. And they don't really care about biology. We made that stuff up. Who
Hmm.
they understand as their parent is the person who they know they can depend on to feed them, clothe them, give them shelter, to laugh with them, to play with them, to read them bedtime stories. I'm gonna get emotional. Yeah, my daughter knows that I'm her parent because I'm there for her, and so for anybody who's struggling to feel that connection, just know to the kid, you're it.
No, and I think that's so important for those parents to realize. I have some friends who've adopted, and they often feel a lot of pressure on themselves to show up a certain way or
Mm-hmm.
put more pressure on themselves than necessary. And
Yeah,
at the end of the day, it's who is giving that child that love and attention and support. That's all they need, right? And
absolutely.
uh, the blood is just this thing that straight people
Yeah.
make up to politicize
Mm-hmm.
births. Is that
Yeah.
actually? I do want to ask because IVF has come up a lot in just the election
It
cycle
really
and news
has.
and politics, and I'm curious how that's been to hear it kind of be used and thrown around in this very political way.
Yeah, it's like really sad because so many people rely on IVF for family planning, whether it is someone that's wanting to harvest their eggs or create embryos for a future date because they're getting older, whether there are people having fertility challenges and like having trouble getting pregnant, whether or not the possibility of children is only possible through IVF or IUI because of your relationship makeup and what anatomy is present in your relationship.
Mhm.
All of those reasons have like our future of parenthood hanging in the balance. Uh, in with like I guess our future of parenthood is hanging in the balance of those like laws and those political decisions that are happening by many people who have no investment in that process. And it's sad because I remember going through the IVF stage in at our particular clinic. They had everybody on the same cycle, so everybody would kind of get their IVF transfers around the same time because they were trying to sync up when the doctor would come in and do the procedures. So everybody knew when everybody was getting their procedure essentially. Like you
Mhm.
see them in the clinic getting their tests up until the day and you're like, okay, this week is when they're doing the procedure. So, fingers crossed that it works for everybody. So we got a yes, you're pregnant. And then you see people coming out of the office who are like devastated because this is their
Mhm.
sixth or seventh time. And they're saying they only have a couple of eggs left. And so when I think about how IVF really has people's hopes and dreams hanging in the balance, it does. So these laws that people are making, or the politicizing that's happening around birthing is really challenging to sit with, because I don't think that the people who are so negative against IVF really understand what it means to someone when they're able to have a child.
No, and I think the picture you just painted of everyone in that room, I didn't even realize that you're all in that process together. And I think
Mm-hmm.
if they had experienced that and seeing what it meant to these people and for them not to
Yeah.
get the results they want, right? I think if people really knew that process, not even think twice about these laws, it makes no sense, right? It's just a superiority that they want to tout and just try and rally up anger on their side, which I just can't stand. I'm curious, just in the process of IVF, were there any other unexpected logistical challenges?
I think there are the emotional challenges of talking about this process with family. I think a lot of questions come up around around how you're going to have children, especially because most queer people are situated within non-queer families or spaces of some kind. And so we definitely had people ask questions about my wife's decision to carry my embryo. We've had questions and negative opinions really about that decision.
What
So
kind of
some
negative opinions?
At some point, my wife got questions like, "Does that make you a surrogate if you're carrying Mo's embryo?" And I think that that was like particularly painful for her, because if you even check out my wife's Instagram, she is like mother, like the mother. She
Yeah.
is like here to support other birthing people going through their journeys. So it's really important to her, and that just kind of rocked her a bit. Like, would I not be a mother enough because of this journey? Now, again, we've already proven that that's false. That's a lie. She's not only bonded with our daughter, she has like become the mother she needed with my daughter and with her own inner child. And so I'm just really grateful to get to the other side of that, to prove those people wrong.
Yeah.
And at the same time, it presents this challenge. It presented this challenge in our journey because we had to be okay with our decision, even in the face of that kind of opposition. And it creates hurt and heartbreak in a time that could be the most joyful in our lives. It was
Yeah.
definitely, it was a challenge.
Yeah, I can see how just people don't understand and maybe just ask the wrong questions and have those, and it's not the time to do that, really, right?
Yeah.
So I'm curious too, did you ever feel like there were stigmas from within the queer community that you felt or questions from them?
You know, I don't feel as though I met so many of the stigmas within the community, because I was already going through gender transition. And so I think people just kind of like assumed I would not give birth. I think if I wanted to carry a child, that's when I'd face way more stigma from the community,
Mm,
because there's this association that masculine people don't carry children. And I think a lot of masculine women experience this, and then other people, masculine people, assign female at birth. And so I think in my case, I didn't experience as much stigma around not carrying, but I know that it would have been present if that was not true. Like if I
yeah.
did carry.
Yeah. I hear a lot of queer people don't want to have kids and they use this excuse or reason. They say, I'm not meant to have kids, so why would
Mm,
I go against nature to do that? Which is
mm,
interesting to hear from the queer community itself. And I'm like, well, you obviously don't know about Sven the penguin, who, you
mm,
know, wasn't supposed to have a kid, but found a kid,
yeah.
adopted a kid anyway. So I'm curious, did you ever find any backlash around just like people like, why do you want to do this? You know, you're queer, you're
Mm,
free. You should like just live a queer
mm,
life.
mm. I think there's this association with people assigned female at birth as though like they're gonna have children. I do feel
Interesting.
like my um queer men friends experience this way more. Even when dating, they have to have these conversations about like, do you want kids? Because it's more likely that someone's gonna say, no, I don't want kids,
Yeah.
than in the queer woman community. And
Yeah.
so that definitely is a very interesting nuance. So I didn't face those kinds of um I didn't face those kinds of statements toward me, but I've definitely experienced them with friends and other in queer spaces. And what I often am wanting to offer to people is that what we understand as natural is often evolving. Just like we have adapted to survive over millennia, that is where we are at this evolution in our species when it comes to technology. So all of these advances in medicine and technology are allowing us to expand what we understand as natural. Sometimes people say, when you meet someone online, that's like not natural or organic. And I often want to push back because what has evolved in our society in terms of connection is that technology helps us to build more connections than we ever could have across a global landscape. It's made us more conscious of what's happening worldwide. Think about like even in the US, our investment in what is happening in Israel from a like a worlds away, it feels like, because we are now understanding that we are global because of our access to technology. I'd say that that's organic. I'd say that that's like now our new normal or our new natural. So I want us to continue to challenge these notions that if things don't stay the same or how they were millions of years ago, that it's not natural, because we wouldn't be walking upright right now. I guess we should all slump over and walk like with a little hump in our back in order for it to be natural. We have to really evolve and allow ourselves to evolve our mindsets as well.
Yes. Oh, I love that. That is so insightful. And allowing things to become the new natural, right?
Yeah.
And adapting to the times and the opportunities that we have available. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
why not utilize all the technology, all of the opportunities that we have? We have
Yeah.
to take advantage of that.
Yeah.
So, oh, I love that so much. And I wanna go back to, you're getting a little emotional earlier just about thinking about your daughter and
Mm-hmm.
reading her story times. And you described a moment there about being reborn in the delivery room.
Mm-hmm.
And there's something powerful about that for you. Can you explain what that was like?
Yeah, when my daughter was born, I it marked a new chapter in my life. I think many parents experience this, but we don't talk about it. It's not as like
Mhm.
widely talked about. It's I've asked so many people like, why didn't you all prepare me for parenthood? They were like, well, we didn't want to scare you. It really like changes your life, and it's not all negative. It's a lot of positives come with this change. A lot of growing up, but nobody prepared me. So I was in the delivery room, and I'm watching my daughter come into this world. She is breathing her first breath. She's making her first sounds, and it just was this very surreal yet like beautiful experience that's really hard to describe. And I just remember feeling like a new part of myself was coming into being. Not only did her journey signal a shift in my life, so like a new beginning, it also was coinciding with this journey of me going through gender transition. And so by the time that she's saying like her first words, and her first words being daddy, I am like, I am solidly a father. And I say that because going through gender transition, it changes your relationship to everyone. Instead of being like everyone's sister, girlfriend, auntie, cousin, now I'm at some point I going through this nebulous space where I'm more gender queer and nobody knows where to place me. I'm just kind of like they. And I'm cool, I'm non-binary, but we don't have a lot of language for relationship and taking claim to someone that are gender neutral. Those terms don't exist as well. And so except for like friend. But if my
Mm.
mother wants to call me something that's gender neutral, she has to say child, which doesn't have the same level of affection as like my daughter, my son. So when I was in
Mm.
that nebulous space, I really noticed that I didn't have a relationship, and like nobody was claiming me in the way that they used to. And so
Mm.
then my daughter comes along, as she's saying her first words, she's like the person that puts this claim on me, and that hadn't been in my life prior. And I was like, this is significant. It was like something inside of me came online, and I'm like, yes, now I don't care the pronouns, whatever. Y'all can just call me Nova's daddy, and I'll be fine for the rest of my life.
Wow, 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 wow. That is so beautiful. And right, the juxtaposition, I guess, of just not having those endearing terms of relationship
Hmm.
and then to feel that from this beautiful baby girl. Oh, that sounds so powerful. And then you said there was this part of you that emerged. What was that new
Hmm.
part of you that you felt?
I felt a groundedness in myself as a transmasculine person, an
Mm,
integration of all of these things that I have been working on. I felt protective. I felt curious. I felt this new responsibility to be a better human, to practice what I preach, to be loving
mm,
in ways that defy all of the scripts and the programming that I had learned before. So I felt this push to live beyond my traumas and my generational patterns that existed in my family. I'm like, I just want to be better, not just for her, but for me, so that I can live a long life and get to see her do better than I'm gonna do. And so
wow.
it just
So
brought in this new level of responsibility.
yeah, and it kind of sounds like all of the challenges of the past just sort of dissipated and were left there, is how I heard that.
Mm.
Would you say that's accurate?
Yeah, I really do think so. It was like it marked a new chapter in my life where I'm like, I am not the same. So when I say I've been reborn, it's very much like I was seeing the world through fresh eyes, through her perspective. And quite literally, you're like down on the floor. You're doing all these baby things. You're talking to a baby constantly. You're watching all of their shows. And so I'm now starting to have to navigate the world from her perspective. But what it did for me was really put me in touch with my own inner child. What it might have been like to be Moe all the way back then. I start asking myself, were you this curious? Were you this sweet? Were you this cute? But it really built inside of me this compassion for myself, and it helped me build on my relationship with myself that I really needed to be a better parent for her.
Wow. Wow. I never would have thought of that, of kind of seeing your own inner child within your
Hmm.
child and just having a new relationship with yourself in that way. And
Yeah.
what would you say, like, just some of the benefits of that for you is having a
Mm.
kid, having those conversations with yourself? What did
Yeah.
it do for you?
Mm. It helped me to understand my own parents better. Uh, that's a big one. Eh, I'll say that it also helped me to understand more of like my place in the world, like why we're all here, why we even do this thing, like why do we become parents? That level of love, connection, sweetness, naivety, innocence that is all embodied in these little humans. It's like, I get it. It's so hard to materialize or like to make tangible in like words alone. But people feel it whenever they get around a kid. It's like we know why we do this, even though it's stressful. But I'll go back to the first point that it built this sincere understanding of my parents in a deeper way. So things had started to change for me. I have been really struggling in my relationship with my parents for some time. They are not who they were when they were raising me. So to their own credit, they have grown immensely, but I was still struggling in what had happened in the past. So when you insightfully pointed out that I left a lot of things in the past after my daughter got here, it's very true. Because seeing my relationship with my daughter and understanding the level of love that I have for her, I was like, my parents had this for me. They have this for me. It doesn't go away, but I don't think I was tapped into it. So it helped me to start to see, oh, that's there. And how I've been reading it was from the perspective of a person who hadn't yet experienced what they had. Now, that doesn't make right any of the things that I had experienced that I didn't like, but what it did was give me a baseline understanding that they love me in this deep way that I could now feel. Before I could hear it, but I couldn't feel it. And it's different when you have a revelation in your heart than in a revelation in your mind.
Ooh, ooh, absolutely. Oh my God, sorry. Yeah, that last point of
Yeah.
just understanding it conceptually, because I think a lot of us queer people, especially if you've had some challenging homophobic, transphobic experiences with your
Mm-hmm.
parents, you you know that they did the best with what they had, and you can
Yeah.
understand that. But
Yeah.
there's a point when you really feel that love and you feel their
Mm-hmm.
intention that, some of us really get to experience, and it just changes your whole relationship with them. And
Mm-hmm.
I know that happened for me about 6 years ago when
Wow.
my dad came into my room and he just said, "Hey, I just want to let you know I love you, and
Oh,
I know you're gay, and I just want you to be happy." And he was in tears, like, poor man,
I'm
just like,
getting
but
emotional.
just, and like to hear that from him and him
So
acknowledge me,
beautiful.
like that, all of the things that happened in the past, I was able to really
Mm-hmm.
leave there, and I needed
Mm-hmm.
that shift.
Mm-hmm.
And so it sounds like for you as well, just to have that experience with your own daughter and to feel that love there
Mm-hmm.
allowed you to really receive that love from them in new
Mm-hmm.
ways.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
because we had been, making movement toward apologies, and we had been going to therapy, and I just was really struggling for a long time
Uh-huh.
to like move beyond the past,
Yeah.
even though those apologies were there, even though that love was there. So I knew it was something inside of me that wasn't open. And it took some time, like a couple years into my daughter's life, for me to really fully open. But once I did, I'm like, okay, this is like I can settle there now and I can like really do this work from a different place. But before I wasn't at a place where I could hear it because I was still holding
Mhm.
on to what had been done and not really attaching to the newness or these sincere conversations that
Mhm.
my parents were trying to have with me.
Yeah, and it's hard to do that, I think, just to acknowledge that, when we have those experiences as kids, as teenagers, it just builds up this wall of resentment. I've
It
I've
really
felt it in
does.
myself. I've seen it with my clients, and it's to just like take that wall down. Like, it's not going to happen overnight. You have to want to do it, and you have to work at it. And
Yeah.
and even then, it takes work on their part. Are they showing up differently?
Yeah.
Are they willing to take ownership on their
Mhm.
side? And
Mhm.
so it's a whole process. So what is your relationship like now with your parents?
Oh, so meaningful, so beautiful. They've been
Mhm.
really willing to go there with me in like all of the ways. My mom has even been on podcast episodes with me,
What?
talking about our journey. And so I'm
Uh,
grateful. She's actually a reverend of the Christian faith. So a lot of our journey has been informed by that. And at some point, what she had been taught through her religious training was that being LGBTQ plus was not right. And
okay.
she went on her own journey to interrogate that. And she had to have the openness to do that. So, I mean, it takes courage. And she started to understand and see that if her understanding is that the God of her understanding is love, then love is for all people. God will love everybody regardless. So some of the things that she had been taught, she started to say is like, that's not right. And so now she's like an advocate. Like she's telling her pastor and other reverends, like, we need to be more celebratory of queer people in our churches. We need to make sure that they know they're welcome here.
Wow.
And so she's like my biggest like supporter and advocate. And it was a journey. I had some of the work was I needed to be open enough to tell her what I needed. Once I had it, it wasn't even like I can't, it took so much work for me to get up to these conversations that I sometimes am like, if I would have just had these conversations sooner, but I was so used to not using my voice, not wanting to be seen. So a lot of my work was around authenticity and allowing my mom to know what it is I needed from her. My dad has pretty much always been like, "You're my kid, I love you," and just on it.
Hmm.
But that pain in the relationship with my mom, I think, kind of like overshadowed what he has always been doing. And so I
Hmm.
know that that hasn't been fair to him saying that out loud if he's listening. But but my mom,
Yes.
like we've gone on this journey and I'm just really grateful that she's just so celebratory and it's definitely been she was helping us. She's a registered nurse, so she was giving my wife her shots when we were going through
Oh,
IVF. That was her special contribution. So she feels very connected to our daughter and just very,
Wow.
very in love with her, but also with us. We're in a new chapter.
I love hearing that so much. And I think we need to hear more stories about that and relationships with our
Hmm.
parents being able to be reconciled in this way, and how much work it takes on your part for you to be courageous enough to let yourself be seen
Yeah.
and to have your needs be asked for. And because I mean, let's face it, right? We want things so badly, we want that acceptance so badly, and oftentimes we get rejected as queer people. So
Hmm.
to ask for our needs is very vulnerable and scary, and it takes a lot of strength and courage and work to be able to put that out there on the people whose approval we want most, which is our parents. So I think, oh, it's so great to hear that you have that relationship
Yeah.
with her now. Yeah.
Yay. Thank you so much for saying that out loud. I know somebody listening is probably like, yes, yes, yes. Like, because I really feel like this is so many people's story that that have had their voice silenced in some way or been told that the way they love or the way that they live is wrong. It can get harder and harder to show up authentically. We can feel like we want to hide. And once we have this, like, if even if it's a little bit of courage, if we could take that courage and really show up fully, it really makes a difference. Somebody is going to see that authenticity and match us with belonging. They're going to say, hey, come over here. You're like me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm just really grateful that I've allowed myself to do that because it's really given me back a lot in my relationships. Now, this won't be everybody's story. Some people are going to show up authentically and they will not be seen. But I know that they're going to be seen by somebody who is going to step in and create that chosen family with them that's going to love them. And it does not have to be who we think it has to be from in order for
That
it to
part.
be valid.
Yeah, it might not be who we want it to be from, but the people who do see our authenticity are going to be inspired by that, as you said, right?
Yeah.
We will attract the people that are meant to be in our lives.
Absolutely.
This is great. This is great, Mo.
Yeah.
So now I got to ask about your daughter, because
Yeah.
you refer to her as one of your biggest teachers
Oh,
in
yeah.
life, and I'm just curious, what are some things that she teaches you? You said she
Mm.
also trolls you too, which
Yeah.
I'm
Oh,
curious
absolutely.
about.
All the
But
time.
I'm curious, what does she teach you?
To be consistent. If I say I'm going to do something, then I have to do it. So I have to deliver. She remembers everything. So she's like, you said. And I'm like, I did say. So I know I have to do it. I'm not going to sit there and disappoint her because I said, so I keep my word. She's
Mhm.
shown me the value of that and how important that is. She's also shown me that everything I do, someone is watching. Now, in this instance, it's her, but from the way that my wife walks and talks, the things that she says, to the ways in which I maybe tell a joke or laugh, she's mirroring all of it. And that, again, reminds me of our responsibility to one another to treat other people how we want to be treated, but also to treat people as though someone innocent and special is like watching and mirroring that. So it's like if I want her to go through the world with confidence, I have to hold my head high. I don't get to do negative self-talk out loud in front of a kid who is going to learn that as their internal process. So I am not
Mhm.
going to be doing that. Like, I might have my
Yeah.
comments internally that I'm working through, but if I'm saying, "Oh, I'm not cute today," she would surely just as quickly be like, "Yes, you are cute, Daddy." We don't talk about ourselves like that because I do that with her. And so when I say she's my greatest teacher, it's like she is constantly curious about the world because it's new to her, that she's like picking out things that I haven't noticed, or she's helping me in my journey of reconnecting with this part of myself. I think we all come here as these children. We
Hmm.
literally come here as children. And we don't come here with these messages about division and separation and these limited beliefs about who we get to be or who we get to love. We don't come here with that. We learn that. And so she's helping me to unlearn that through her curiosity, her unconditional love, through um her openness to the world. And she's just reminding me that this world that I hope to be possible, where everybody gets to be themselves, already exists before we taint it with this other BS. And so I'm really hoping that we can just help everybody just remember that we don't come here with this divisiveness, and that we can create this world right here. It doesn't have to be far off.
I'm just struck too in hearing that how powerful each of us are individually, and in the way that we show up, how much influence we have, right? We're just talking about it with our parents, and
Yeah.
how just taking ownership of things and being more authentic and outspoken, we can shift relationships with those people. We can attract people who appreciate that. And also with your child, you showing up a certain way is going to be reflected right back to you. So that
Yeah.
awareness of, oh, people are watching, people see
Yeah.
this, people feel this.
Yeah. There is
And
an impact.
yeah, and why not be the best version of myself every single day to make this world a little bit more united, a little bit more
Yeah.
joyful?
Yeah. Yeah. I
That's
love that you
awesome.
just said that. You pulled out something so important, that um, the she mirrors back the impact pretty like immediately. That's like, I feel like that's a really good framing of what I'm trying to say, is that like I get this instantaneous like reflection of like what the impact is, what my reach is, but through like her response. So if I do something like I step on something she doesn't want me to step on, it's like, you stepped on that, and I'm like, I am so sorry. Then she comes to give me a hug. It's okay, mistakes happen. And it's just like, when she's immediately telling me that bothered me that you did that. So I love that she's like, I can feel my impact. So then I go, I really apologize. And that apology, you could tell, means the world to her. So she comes and gives me a hug, and then she's reflecting back to me that it's okay. And I think that I'm hoping this is how we raise humans that really care about one another into the next generation.
Yeah, I think that's exactly how it happens. And that empathy that you're teaching her, and that forgiveness, that grace that she's
Mm-hmm.
showing to you by saying mistakes happen, that is so adorable. Oh my gosh. Uh,
She really does. That's her thing.
so Mo, what advice would you give to queer people who are on the fence about whether or not they want
Hmm.
children or not in their lives? What would you tell them?
Yeah. I want you to make that decision for yourself. Like, if you really want to have children, don't talk yourself out of it because you are wondering how it's going to happen. Don't talk yourself out of it because you're wondering what other people will say. If that is a decision or a choice that you really want to make, um, start exploring what your options are. You have a lot of options. And then if children is not something that you're desiring in your life, but you're like, I want to be adjacent to children, I want to be in community with children, seek that out. Don't feel like you have to have children because you need to reproduce some type of script in society that expects you to bear fruit and multiply and do all the things. Because I think, just like you started this episode, Nathan, talking about how for queer people, having children is such an intentional choice, because quite often we can't just happen into having children. So it has to be intentional. And in that thinking, if you're knowing you probably are not wanting to have a child, that will show up in how you're parenting. So it's really important that you just follow your own heart, that you really do what's authentic. And if there's opportunity for you to be near children in your community and that feels fulfilling, then do that. There is no pressure to reproduce here from me. I I just want to encourage everybody to figure out where their values lie in this way. And I think the second thing I'll say, and I'll try to keep it brief, is that I want people to examine what things they picked up from their families of origin, what things that they picked up from their own childhood that is still present with them. Because I think, I won't say it's the worst thing you could do as a parent, but I'll say it's not that great if you parent from a place of trying to give your child what you didn't get. Because ultimately, your child needs different things. They don't need the things that you didn't get. And I think a lot of times our parents went from that perspective. Well, I was poor growing up, so I'm going to give you all of these things, but what you really wanted was their time. But they couldn't see it because they're so focused on giving you the things they didn't get. And so it's really important that we build these unique and authentic relationships with our children where they can tell us what they need and that we show up with that. And I think most of us can relate to this when dating, like, or if you've ever had a partner of any kind. If they ask you for a thing and you show up with something else, yes, they might be grateful, but they really wanted what they asked you for. Like, if my wife asked me for a particular thing to eat, like if she said tacos and I show up with chicken wings, it's like, bruh, you did not listen. And I think
Yeah.
this is true for parenting as well.
That is such a good reminder, because I do think people who become parents, they're like, well, my parents did this and I want
Mm-hmm.
to do this for my kids so that I
Mm-hmm.
can either subconsciously show my parents how it's done,
Yeah.
or for myself so I can feel better about myself and really heal my inner child that way. But your
Mm-hmm.
children aren't there to heal you or to be the subjects of your healing, right? You should be healing yourself and then have your child in addition to that. Um, so I have a friend who's become a parent recently, and her mom
Oh.
used to make her do karate or pressure her to do
Mm.
karate. She never wanted to do karate. She wanted to do dance. So
Yeah.
she has a daughter now, and she tried to get her daughter into dance, and she's like, "Well, you should do dance." Her daughter wanted nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
So she's like, "I want to do karate," and she's like, "Oh God, oh God."
Yeah.
So in an effort now to honor her daughter, her
Yeah.
daughter now is doing karate and
Yeah.
loves it. And it's just this hilarious thing where like she hated karate when she was a kid,
That's
and now
how it
she's taking her
happens.
daughter to do it because it's what
Yeah.
she wants to do. And so
Yeah.
you really have to just meet the needs
Mm-hmm.
of that child and respect that
Mm-hmm.
relationship for what it is.
Yeah, so
So,
true. Even if you like admire your parents and you think they did everything right, that does
mhm,
not mean your child wants to recreate your childhood because you think if I do it just this way that my parents did, my child will turn out fine. That's
yeah,
not true. So what
yeah.
you're saying, Nathan, is so important that if we really listen to our children, they're going to tell us no matter how great we think that our parents' parenting was, our children need to be our teachers in what it means to parent them, because like you're
Mm,
saying, like let's say she loved karate and she was like, oh, I want my daughter to do karate. If her daughter was like, I literally don't want anything to do with that, it would just not be good. So I'm glad that they
yeah,
found this way of like that your friend already listens to her daughter, obviously, and she's worked through
yeah.
her own feelings that are coming up. Like
Exactly.
when my daughter got here, she's super girly. She loves dresses. I'm like, I'm a whole transgender person. Of course, I was hoping for a tomboy. She is not that. She will I'm sorry. She will totally wear like joggers or do something like that from time to time, but she definitely prefers to wear dresses, and that's okay. That's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, you got to let them be who they are, right? That's all
Yeah.
you can do. So
Yeah.
awesome. Well, thank you so much for this conversation. I feel like we learned so much from you, and I'm hoping everyone really takes something valuable from this conversation. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
I'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Queer Conscious Podcast, where we explore how love feeds us, heals us, and gives us life. I'm your host and queer love coach, Nathan Serrato. But remember that the conversations that we're having here today are not a replacement for working with a licensed therapist, professional coach, or mental health practitioner. These conversations are for entertainment and education purposes only. But if you are dealing with some big challenges and you're thinking about seeking some professional support, it is one of the most empowering things that you can do for yourself. You can visit queerconscious.com for more information on how to do that. Now, if you love today's episodes and you want more episodes like this, I need your help. Please leave a 5-star rating and review. That's going to help me to bring you more high quality content and interviews. So until then, take care of yourself and don't forget to let love in.